Thursday, 9 a.m. is already behind us. It's time to tell you about the most important news. The television news service is at your attention. While you're watching this broadcast, don't forget to like and leave a comment. A massive air attack on Ukraine. At night, the Russians launched several waves of drones, and by morning they struck with missiles. Explosions were heard in Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, and Poltava regions. The enemy targeted the energy infrastructure. It was loud in Chernihiv as well. The Russians attacked one of the enterprises, and late in the evening they struck Nizhyn with drones, hitting a Nova Poshta terminal, twice hitting an apartment building, as well as other civilian infrastructure. So far, it is known that one person was injured and fires broke out at the sites of the strikes. Details will be provided in the next TCH broadcasts. Drone terror in the Kherson region. In Zolota Balka, a Russian drone attacked an elderly man. He was hospitalized with injuries to his face, abdomen, and limbs. Another civilian was injured in Kherson. He was also hit by a strike from an enemy drone. The occupiers also dropped explosives on a trolley bus. The passengers and the driver were unharmed. Trump spoke about the Ukrainian offensive. At his press conference at the White House, he talked about a meeting with Zelensky scheduled for Friday and about the fact that he is aware of Ukraine's intentions to launch an offensive. The US president also announced an agreement with India regarding Russian oil. According to him, during a phone conversation with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Modi promised that India would no longer buy oil from Russia in order not to support the aggressor. Germany will allocate 400 million euros for the purchase of Ukrainian long-range drones. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius announced this at a joint press conference with his Ukrainian counterpart. More than half of NATO member states will join in the purchase of American weapons for Ukraine under the Pearl Initiative. This was reported by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Sweden, Estonia, and Finland have pledged to contribute to this fund. The Pearl system has been in effect since August of this year, as Washington now refuses to simply hand over weapons to Ukraine and instead demands payment from its partners. NATO allies also discussed today how to create a drone wall to counter Russia. They want to launch the new drone defense system by the end of 2027. And Germany has taken the initiative to create such an EU air defense shield. The local defense minister Boris Pistorius announced that they will invest 10 billion euros in all types of UAVs. In addition, during today's North Atlantic Alliance meeting, the Czech side revealed details of its initiative to provide ammunition to Ukraine. Defense Minister Jana Chernoshova reported that foreign donors have contributed $4.5 billion to this project. With this money, they managed to organize 3.7 million artillery shells for the Ukrainian army. Despite these figures, analysts from the Kiel Institute for the World Economy report that military aid to Kyiv in July and August dropped by 43% compared to the first half of the year. The Russians have a plan for the further military exploitation of Belarusian territory. This was stated today by Volodymyr Zelensky after a report from the head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, Ole Ivashchenko. Zelensky noted that at this stage, Ukraine will not make this information public. However, Ukraine will warn its partners who may be threatened by this. Trump is threatening Spain with tariffs over its refusal to increase defense spending. He told this to journalists at the White House. The American president said he is very dissatisfied with Spain because it is the only NATO country that has not raised its defense spending to 5%. Donald Trump considers this disrespectful to the alliance and is thinking about punishing the country with tariffs. Previously, Trump even suggested considering the possibility of excluding Spain from NATO because of its low defense spending. Spain has already responded to such statements from America. The Spanish Minister of Foreign Affairs emphasized Spain's commitment to NATO and added that his country is a reliable ally of the alliance. And Spain has military expenditures at the level of 2% in accordance with the commitments established at the 2014 summit. He noted that there is no doubt about Spain's contribution to Euro-Atlantic security. In this context, he recalled the 3,000 Spanish military personnel who are currently ensuring the security of NATO's eastern flank. This is fundamental for the security of the skies over the Baltic countries, the politician stated. A serious blow to the heart of Putin's war financing. The United Kingdom has imposed some of the toughest sanctions against the Kremlin's energy sector. The list of restrictions includes 91 legal entities and individuals, including the largest oil companies as well as Rosneft and Lukoil. Also targeted by the sanctions are 51 vessels linked to the so-called shadow fleet of the Kremlin, several banks, and the Russian national payment card system. As explained by the British government, everyone who fell under these economic restrictions had helped fuel the Russian war machine. For example, the companies Rosneft and Lukoil together export more than 3 million barrels of oil every day. Notably, all these measures coincide with the start of Russian Energy Week in Moscow, undermining Putin's attempts to promote his main source of funding globally. They are sending the wrong signal to Putin. The European Commission criticized today's visit of the Hungarian foreign minister to Moscow for the Energy Forum. The lead spokesperson for foreign affairs, Anita Hipper, stated that for the EU, it is fundamental that any bilateral contacts by member states align with the position and policy of the European Union, especially when our relations with third countries have been reduced to a minimum. And the current visit, especially at a time when Brussels is working on sanctions and increasing support for Ukraine, sends the wrong signal to Putin. Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó, at a conference in Moscow, decided to complain about the European Union's energy policy. He claims that his country will suffer if it is cut off from Russian energy resources. And for Budapest, national interests are the top priority. The official also added that he does not understand why Budapest should break off relations with Moscow, since, as he stated, Russia has never let them down and deliveries have always arrived. Earlier, American President Donald Trump called on Budapest to stop buying Russian oil. Meanwhile, the Hungarian side continues to oppose the European Commission's plans to gradually phase out all imports of Russian gas and liquefied natural gas to the EU by the end of 2027. Against the backdrop of the Russian threat, Sweden is updating its shelters. The country is also significantly increasing its civil defense budget and restoring dozens of shelters. How long will the process take, and what difficulties are the Swedes facing? TSN correspondent Katarina Fedorchenko invites us to take a look inside a shelter in the center of Stockholm.
In case of danger, residents of the Swedish capital will have to do what Ukrainians have already gotten used to, spending the night in a parking garage. This shelter was carved into the rock back during World War II, and just last month it was restored. So, during an attack, cars will be evacuated from here, and instead the shelter will be able to accommodate 1,200 people.
The shelter can withstand explosions, shrapnel, and other consequences of bombing. It is also airtight, so it can even withstand exposure to biogas, chemical gases, and even radioactive substances.
Sweden began actively restoring shelters last year. Every year, it will allocate 100 million kronor for this purpose. That's about $9 million. First, they want to renovate the large shelters that can accommodate more than 1,000 people. There are dozens of such shelters in the country dating back to the last century. Currently, repairs are actively underway on 24 of them. In total, there are 64,000 shelters in the country. So, when all of them will be renovated remains an open question.
100 million a year is not enough for all 64,000, but I think it depends on the government, how long it wants to allocate money for this. But the government intends to renovate all the shelters in Sweden. And once we have renovated all the shelters, we might start building new ones.
Last year, Sweden updated its civil defense recommendations booklet for the first time since the Cold War. They added information there about self-defense, psychological protection, digital security, and protection against air attacks. When asked whether citizens are now well prepared, not everyone gives an affirmative answer.
I don't think we are very well prepared. Some information comes to you by mail and so on, but I'm not sure. We in Sweden are not used to crises.
Stockholm believes that the military threat to Sweden has increased and does not rule out the possibility of an armed attack, particularly from Moscow. However, while the Swedes, together with other European allies, are only beginning to prepare for defense against Russia, the Institute for the Study of War warns that Moscow may attack NATO countries much earlier than Europe predicts. Experts note that the Kremlin is stepping up sabotage and reconnaissance missions. And so a serious threat to the alliance could arise soon. Katerina Fedorchenko, TSN 1+1.
You're watching TSN. To stay up to date with the main news, subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications, and I'll continue with the news broadcast. Smuggling of luxury jewelry. In the Lviv region, a customs officer was detained for helping to illegally import jewelry from world-famous brands into Ukraine. According to the investigation, the official was advising clients. He explained how to hide the valuables in the car so they wouldn't be discovered during inspection. And when those cars crossed the border, he personally handled the inspection. And of course, he never found anything. For his services, he demanded 4% of the value of the items. Investigators say that using this scheme, jewelry worth almost $400,000 was brought into Ukraine, and all of it without paying customs duties. The official was detained while receiving part of the bribe. He could face a prison term of 5 to 10 years, with posters and accompanied by guide dogs. An event was held in Kyiv to mark International White Cane Day. This mobility aid has become a symbol of independence and mobility for people who are blind. Why do people with visual impairments use a white cane who joined the event to support them, and what issues are the participants trying to draw attention to? Natalia Tikachuk will tell us more.
Unfortunately, the number of blind veterans is increasing. We already need to change our...
Light within. That is the motto under which the event for International White Cane Day is being held.
It's truly important to see with your heart. It's deeply important to have genuine empathy and profound understanding.
October 15th is an annual awareness day dedicated to blind people, including veterans who lost their sight because of the war. And it is blind veterans, together with representatives of public organizations, volunteers and students, all together, that's about 50 participants walked today along Kreshchatyk to Independence Square.
It's important now in our country to develop inclusion and to help people who have lost their hearing or sight or have other impairments.
So that these people don't feel, as has already been said, so they don't feel unnecessary, so they can work and live a life just like everyone else.
Specially trained guide dogs accompanied the participants along the route. All of this is to draw attention to the problems faced by people with visual impairments.
They are a very effective means of socialization. A highly intelligent dog can easily memorize up to 40 distinct routes and then diligently starts working as a dedicated guide. It's a partner that leads, warns about danger, and stops in front of obstacles.
People are holding signs with the words accessibility and inclusion. And first and foremost, activists are trying to reach out to government officials with requests, or rather demands, to adapt urban spaces to the needs of blind people.
Every single time I venture out, even if it's just to the local gym, well, it's quite a significant and challenging set of problems just to successfully get there, because unfortunately there are absolutely no proper sidewalks and no audible traffic lights whatsoever. And even simply crossing the street itself is incredibly difficult and poses a real challenge.
If a person is walking a bit toward the road where there is no audible traffic light, first of all, you shouldn't grab them by the elbow. Just call out to them and offer your help.
For context, 280. 35 million, that's how many people in the world have visual impairments. 39 million are completely blind. There are no official statistics in Ukraine, but including due to the war, the number of blind people increases every year.
That's thousands of people. If we go by official data, there are 70, 80, maybe 100,000 blind people in Ukraine. Representatives of organizations that support blind people say that these numbers are actually much higher, 3, 4, even 5 times more. And we see that, unfortunately, the fighting is increasing the number of blind people, especially blind veterans.
To adapt to their surroundings, most blind people rely on the white cane. The first person to paint an ordinary cane white was the British photographer James Biggs. He lost his sight due to an accident at the beginning of the last century. The man tried to walk around the city on his own, but neither pedestrians nor drivers reacted to his black cane. So he painted the cane white, and it became noticeable. All blind people soon adopted his innovation, and since then, the white cane has been a symbol of blind people, and the International White Cane Day has been celebrated for more than half a century.
The eruption of the Lewatobi Laki-Laki volcano in Indonesia caused massive plumes of ash to be released, reaching a height of 10 kilometers. Emissions from the crater occurred twice, at night and in the morning. Neighboring villages were hit by sand and gravel rains, and the roofs of houses were covered with a layer of ash and sand. Farmlands were also affected. Dozens of people living closest to the volcano were evacuated. Lewatobi Laki-Laki is one of the most active volcanoes in Indonesia. Last year, as a result of an eruption, 10 people died and thousands of homes were damaged. Penguins are hurrying to claim the best nesting spots. Ukrainian scientists from the Vernadsky Antarctic Station have published footage of the birds returning to the island after winter. These are flocks of subantarctic penguins. They are the fastest of their kind and can reach speeds of up to 36 kilometers per hour. These birds, the polar researchers joke, are their main neighbors. They return every season, nest around Vernadsky, and begin their romantic courtship rituals. By the way, the penguins have grown so fond of Galindes Island that on an area of just 1 square kilometer, their numbers have already reached 7,000. What will it be like this season? The polar researchers promise to report back as soon as they can spot the penguins through the blizzards. Because in Antarctica, even though it's already spring, the snow and wind have piled up drifts over a meter high. At this moment, that was the latest update. Don't miss our next TCH broadcasts to stay up to date with the news.